Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to join us today. My name is Candace Summers. I'm the Senior Director of Education here at the museum. And before I introduce our speaker, Carley Cotner, who is an End-of-Life Doula, I need to give a shout out to our Lunch and Learn sponsors, MCK CPAs and Advisor, and our live stream sponsor, WGLT, your local public media, which is part of the NPR network. And to let you know, this program is being live streamed and recorded, so I always tell people to mind your P's and Q's if you don't want it to live on the internet forever. And after today's program, I invite all of you to take a sneak peek at our new multi-floor hallway display, Mourning in McLean, which explores the perceptions of death, ritualistic practices, and customary expressions of grief in central Illinois from the mid-19th to early 20th century. So all three floors of our building have display case that each have a thematic different theme, and that will be up until November 21st. So if you can't stay today, and for our folks at home, you have plenty of time to come and see those. Today's program will explore the vital role of an end-of-life doula, highlighting how they provide emotional, spiritual, and practical support during the dying process. And so with that, I'd like to welcome Carley Cotner.
Hello everybody. Thank you to the museum for inviting me. Oh, I need my thing here. Here we go. All right. So, what is an end-of-life doula? There we go. All right. So, we're going to touch on a few things here. My timeline, what got me into this line of work, kind of how I stumbled into it, because it was not a graceful transition. What a doula is not, because I think that's almost more important than what I am able to offer. What my core responsibilities are, and then we'll get into the concept of death cafes and kind of who attends, why do they attend, what do they look like, because hearing death cafe can be kind of a, oh, what is this? The name doesn't exactly give away what is going on. Then we'll be looking forward into what I have planned for events moving forward in McLean County, as well as some other people who have things going on here. So I lost my stepmother when I was 8 years old. She was very young, it was very sudden. I then lost my grandmother, who was my best friend in the whole world, when I was 10. That was in 2004, and there has not been a single year since then that I have not attended a funeral for someone who I love. When I say that, I get a lot of sympathy, a lot of, oh gosh, that's terrible, because funerals are they're not fun. No one wants to go to a funeral because it means that someone you love has died. However, I want to remind everyone that although I have been to 20 plus funerals in the last 20 years, it's a privilege to have known people and to have loved people as much as I have, that I wanted to attend. In 2019, this Monday actually was the anniversary, the 6-year anniversary of the passing of my partner, who I lost to gun violence. That was different. I had lost dozens of people in my life, however, never to anything violent. That was kind of a turning point for me. I no longer, I wasn't as at peace with death as just being a fact of life at that point. Then in 2021, I lost my grandfather, and that was luckily a very quick process. From the time that he was admitted to the hospital to his passing, it was about 2.5 days. However, I lived the closest to the hospital. I was trying to think, 27, 28, late 20s. I lived the closest to the hospital. We were still in the midst of the pandemic, so by default, I was the person who had to be there. I was one of the only people allowed to come and go while he was passing, until I kind of sweet-talked the staff toward the end and said, please let some people come say goodbye to him. During his passing, during that couple days and the weeks after, I had so many people telling me, you've done a great job, you've done so well, we're so lucky that you were handling things. I was a wreck. I was not doing well. All I wanted for those 3 days was to go home, walk my dog, see my child who is here in the audience, and brush my teeth because I felt disgusting. Everything was falling apart. I was in emotional pain. I was not ready to lose another person. I was exhausted. And I just, when I think about that time, it's silly because I really just wanted to brush my teeth. I just wanted to go home and brush my teeth. And I couldn't, because who's going to sit with my grandpa when he's in the hospital? And he was the toughest guy. He had beaten cancer more than 5 years prior, went to the hospital because his back hurt. He's a big, tall, almost 7-foot tall man, and I remember the face of the doctor who walked in and said, hey, let's talk outside. I don't know how he walked in the door. I knew at that point that if we did go home, we were going home to die. We were not going home to get better. There was not a chance. And I asked if I could relay that to my grandfather, and he said, okay, I want to stay here. He didn't want to go home, and I didn't push it. So we stayed in the hospital. He passed 2 days later, and I'm grateful that it was quick. During that time in my life, I had finally started recovering from the loss of my partner, and I had met someone who I then just cut off because I was losing it. I was unwell. Things had snowballed, and I said, I need time. I need to focus on myself. And it wasn't until a couple years later that I was kind of circling back with the person I had pushed to the side, who is now my fiance. We're doing fine. And I said, hey, I think I should talk to you about what happened whenever we first met and I was not my best self. And when I think back on it, I was not really speaking to him. I was speaking at him. I was aggressive, and I was saying, Nate, I just wanted to brush my teeth. I just wanted to go home, and there was no one to step in. And why is there no help for families and for the dying individual? Why is there not a person for this? And I kept saying, why isn't there someone? And he sat there, and he's the kindest man I've ever met, and he just sat there and let me hoot and holler and yell. And I remembered I had a birth doula, and why this hadn't crossed my mind at any point sooner, I couldn't tell you. I had a wonderful birth doula. She was great. And so I'm telling him this, I'm like, we need that support on each bookend of our life. We need that at the end just as much as we need whenever we are bringing new life into the world. Why don't we have death doulas? We do. So joke's on me, because a quick Google search would have told me that there is, in fact, a role for this. But when you are so tied up in your grief and the grief leading up to what you know is the inevitable loss of someone you love, you're not thinking rationally. You forget that you can turn to the internet and ask what support is available. I also believe that most people won't know what to search because they're so caught up in what is happening in that moment. And that's okay, that's no one's fault. It's just the nature of how our brains are working whenever we are kind of under attack with emotions. So let me see if I remember how to work this here. Had that conversation with my fiance and said, why don't we have a person for this? I completed my End-of-Life Doula training with INELDA, which is the International End-of-Life Doula Association, in June of 24. So after my conversation with him, where I was spiraling about why we don't have this available, I realized I can do this. I have done this. I've been doing this both for my grandfather as well as in my prior line of work. I was the activity director at a local nursing home, which is a lot of playing bingo. It's so much fun. I had the best time. But the folks wanted to talk about their morality. Nursing homes don't love that. They don't love opening that conversation typically because they want to keep people upbeat and happy, and there's a level of fear involved with we don't want to make people sad, and I get it. I totally get it. But I realized that I've been doing this work. I feel very capable. Let's search, let's figure out who I can train with. INELDA most closely aligned with what I believe in and what I wanted to provide to the community. A month later, I hosted my first Death Cafe here in town. Was absolutely not the first Death Cafe hosted here. I know prior to the pandemic, there were two people who were regularly hosting events, and obviously everything kind of slowed down during that time, and it didn't pick back up, and that's okay. I also did the hard launch on my business, Reverent Partings, which is the name for my end-of-life doula care business. And I spent the last year hosting death cafes when I can, working with clients. And in July of this year, I was accepted into the INELDA certification cohort. It will be a year-long program that I'll be participating in, learning from people who have done this far longer than I have, and working on my certification there. And then this past month, I launched the Healing Library, which I am happy to talk a little bit more about later if people are interested, but essentially, I don't think we give enough credit to children. I have my own here, and I don't think we give enough credit to children in terms of involving them in the conversation. I remember my first experience with death being with my stepmother. That was horrible. I loved her. I actually knew her before my father did. She was my grandma, but she was my grandma's neighbor. And I don't want my child's first experience to be what mine was. I have been researching and have been testing books with her to get kid-friendly opinions here on picture books that are written for children to help them cope with grief, to help them prepare for the loss of a loved one, and understanding that grief is okay. We're all constantly in a state of grief, whether it is grieving a loved one, a job, moving to a new town. We're always missing something, and that's okay. That's okay. Let's see here. I will keep this quick. I know it looks a little aggressive. As your doula, I am not medical staff. I cannot and will not provide medications to you. I am also not a replacement for hospice care. Hospice nurses are incredible. I am not trying to take their job. That is not what I'm here for. I am here to kind of fill in with supporting emotional and spiritual needs. I am also not your legal advisor. That being said, I am happy to provide recommendations if a client were saying, hey, I don't have a will, what do I do? I can help provide phone numbers, help them get things set up, but it is not something that I have any stake in. Now, often end-of-life doulas will have multiple credentials. I worked in the medical field for over 10 years. However, whenever I am working with a client, that hat comes off. I am not here to provide medical advice, and the expectation is that all doulas maintain that professional boundary. So they may be a licensed counselor, and that's wonderful. However, they are not seeing you as a counseling client, they are seeing you as an end-of-life doula client. Let's see here. With doulas, obviously, I mean, I admitted I had no idea that this was an option to receive the help or to look into as a career path. But as you will see if you venture over across the hall, which I plan to do after, to see what the museum has put out, every culture, society, and communal group has traditions and rituals associated with the care for the dying, after-death care for the body, and care for the soul. Now, as more contemporary doulas, we owe a great deal to the people who laid that groundwork. Okay, that was a mouthful. All right. Now, into the core work of being a doula. Providing emotional and physical support to the dying, educating individuals and families on what their options are, which means a lot of attempting to keep up to date on state and federal regulations, which are ever changing, encouraging conversation and reflection, listening. One thing that I picked up during my training was just wait. And they broke it down as, why am I talking? Is what I am saying, am I saying it to fill a gap? Or am I saying it because it's useful? And if it's not useful, just wait, don't say it. It is okay to sit in the silence. Honoring legacy and continuing education. The continuing education piece, it's not something that I think is it's not forced, it is highly encouraged. With doulas, regardless of who you do your training with, whatever group, you should still be wanting to learn more. So that is on you. It is not if you were to pursue becoming a doula, it is not something that someone is chasing after you for. All right. So whenever I meet with a new client, we first just kind of get to know each other and then slowly get into planning and legacy work. Life meaning and legacy, it's a tough thing. I mean, how many times do we hear people say, well, I just don't know what the meaning of life is, and we're chasing that. And that's okay. I don't know it all. I don't know everything about death. I don't know everything about life. I cannot tell you what happens to you after you die. But I can engage with the person, with the client that I am serving. We can encourage them to address unfinished business so that they can feel a little more at peace. And we can also work to leave behind something that helps their loved ones continue to connect with them after their death. Now, my grandmother, she passed in 2004, and my grandfather that was the love of his life. He did not cope well. He did not. And we went through her things. I remember me being one of the grandchildren, I remember us taking turns to go pick Beanie Babies out of her collection. And I still have all of them. I have them all. But we would each go in, and they were all laid out on her bed, and we would go in one at a time and would get to go pick a Beanie Baby to take home because that was grandma's and they were sharing that. And there came a time that my grandpa just kind of boxed up what was left that he just couldn't go through at that point. And he boxed it up for over 10 years. and that's okay. That's okay. It is how he coped. He was doing the best with what he had. He later told me, he said, hey, I'm getting rid of this stuff, go take anything you want. And he didn't realize that a lot of grandma's stuff was in there, and I didn't know until I went in. And it was her Christmas ornaments, and I took those. Those are on my tree. But it was also an entire stack of Avon diaries. My mom forgot about them. My mother had bought daily diaries for my grandma every year for Christmas for a very long time. And I'm like, Mom, you bought her the same thing for a decade, and that's fine, but how did you just forget that you had a committed gift? And I snatched those. The year I was born is missing, and I have ugly cried about that multiple times. But apparently my mom was busy. She was, pregnant. She forgot. But I went through these books, and the one of kind of tucked in the middle here, there was a year she was not great with her journaling this year. But I want to share this with you because I had found it and read this long before I lost my grandpa, before I decided to pursue this work. And I cried a lot and took a picture and sent it to my mom and my sister and my aunt and my cousin and everyone who loved her, and said what an incredible legacy that she has left, that we all know how loved we were. So this was in the end, it's her last entry in 1997. Sorry kids, I didn't keep up very good this year, but I promise I'll do better in 1998. I hope all three of you know how proud I am of you. I couldn't ask for better children and grandchildren and a great husband. And still, I'm like, whew, that makes my eyes a little teary. But it's incredible, and to see it in her handwriting, like, this is such a gift that she left us, knowing that one day we were going to find it. She could have told us, and she did. There was not a day that went by that we didn't know how loved we were by her. But she left that knowing that she wouldn't be here forever, and that her husband and her children and her grandchildren, and now her great-grandchildren, would have that. So I love every part of what I do as a doula, but the legacy work is my favorite because of this. All right. A bit more into the planning side of things. Doulas help the dying person and their loved ones express their wishes about the surroundings and the interactions that they are going to have as they are actively dying. Where would they like to die? Would they prefer, if possible, to die at home? If that is possible, I understand that that is not the case for everyone, because home care is expensive, and I could not afford to take time off work to care for a loved one. Financially, I could not do it, and I get it. But if possible, would they prefer to die at home? If it's not possible, would they prefer to die in a nursing home setting, in a hospital if that's what's needed? If we're in the hospital, would they prefer, if the prognosis is very poor, to be transported home? These kinds of conversations are uncomfortable. I get that. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to go to their parent and say, hey, Mom, what are your plans? But we need to do it. I hear all the time that death brings out the worst in people, but it does not have to. It can bring out the best in everyone. It's possible. It's not easy. It's uncomfortable. It absolutely is. But when you think, I'm sure everyone here has lost someone, probably had a poor experience after with family and friends and fighting, and that's not what Dad would have wanted, and I know them better. Are we sure? Are we sure? Have we asked Dad what Dad wants? One thing I'm grateful for with my grandmother's passing is I remember her being in the hospital for about 10 days. She was very stubborn, and they did not think she would make it through the night, and she said, "I'll show you." And she was in the hospital for about 10 days, and I remember my mother not particularly wanting me. I was my daughter's age, she's almost 9, not wanting me to go see her because she was all hooked up and didn't look like herself. And I remember my grandpa saying Barb would want her to be able to say goodbye. And I'm glad that I did. I'm glad I did. And that's not how I remember her. So if you're worried about children only remembering their loved one hooked up to machines, that's one memory. That's one very short memory that I have versus a lifetime of at that time, a very short amount of time in my childhood that I had with my grandmother. And I know that she was funny. She loved karaoke. She did not turn down a PBR in a frosted glass from the American Legion in Hayworth, and she loved bingo. I remember so many more fun, beautiful things about her versus the one instance that my mother was worried about, and I understand why my mom was concerned. I do, and I don't fault her for that, but I'm glad she lost that fight. I am glad. So when I have a client and we're working through what are your wishes, although I am grateful that I got to say goodbye to my grandmother, they may say, I don't want children present. I don't want my grandkids to see me that way. And I will advocate for their wishes. That is not what they wanted. That is not what they wanted, and they made that clear. And I will do my best to make sure that that is respected. Other things that can be planned ahead of time are things that you don't necessarily think about, but what items do you want within view? If they're dying at home or in the hospital, you can take things to make it a more comfortable environment. Do we want low lighting because that can be overstimulating? Do we want like just side lamps, no overhead? What kinds of sounds do they want to hear? Do we want the bed in a certain position? Do we want the bed near a window so they can look outside? Do we want to try to facilitate moving outside in those final moments to spend some time outdoors? These are all things that can be possible with a little finagling and sometimes some sweet talking of home care aides, but it's not an immediate no. We don't have to shut that down. We can give more options. Of course, there can be disagreements in the family, so there can be instances where there's children and they disagree on what needs to happen. However, if we do that planning ahead of time, and I have either a verbal conversation, or oftentimes I just kind of jot notes down so that I don't forget, I can interject and say, actually, Mom made it clear this is what she would like, and I'd really like to honor her wishes. And then there's no bad guy. There's no bad guy except for maybe me, but that's okay, because that's okay. If I am the bad guy because I am advocating for the dying person's wishes, I can live with that. I'm okay with that. As we get into, as things progress, as we are in those final days and final hours and death is imminent, my main responsibility is just to hold space for the plan that the dying person has made earlier. I'll provide emotional, spiritual, and physical support. We'll use the music that we planned on, light touch or no touch if that's what they wanted. Sometimes they say, I don't want anyone to touch me, but then we talk more and they're like, actually, I'm okay with someone holding my hand. And that's okay. That's okay. But if there's no touch, that's all right too. Guided imagery is very powerful. If you've never done it before, it can sound a little odd, and it can be kind of an odd feeling the first time that you sit through that. And ritual, which does not have to be anything elaborate. When I was working at the nursing home I was previously with, we had someone who was she was wonderful, she was so sweet. There was a almost impossible language barrier. I don't think she knew a single thing that I was saying to her aside from hello, and I certainly could not understand anything she was saying to me, and that was okay. But I picked up on, as I would go and visit her, she would struggle trying to open these, the little creamer pods for her coffee. And she wanted to make chai tea. That was what she wanted to do, and she didn't want to drink it. She just wanted to go through the motions or watch someone else go through the motions because it was too hard for her hands. So I would go and visit her every day, and we would make this little DIY version of chai tea, and she would just hold the cup. She would just hold the cup, and that was so comforting for her, just smelling it and holding it, and that was enough. That was enough. She was very, very sweet, very sweet lady. Let's see. So, sorry, I'm kind of losing my spot here. Oh goodness. The main goal, and if you take anything away from the goal of what doula work is, just remember that the dying person is your guide. Your main job is to honor their wishes and to give them the death that they want to have, not the death that you or their family think that they should have. Let's see. When my grandfather was in the hospital, I knew he didn't want to go home. He voiced that. So they admitted him for the night, and they told me, just go home, get some sleep, brush your teeth. And I did. He had a stroke that night and was unresponsive following. What I needed in that moment was for someone to tell me that even though he's unresponsive, it's okay and it's great that you're still following his wishes, because they could have tried some final efforts. And I said no. I said no because that's not what he wanted, and he had voiced that to me. And even though he's unresponsive now and maybe we could do something, he was dying. He was dying. And that was okay. He had a beautiful life. He was a hardworking man. He was funny. He was tough. The cancer was not even the worst thing, it wasn't even the most traumatic thing that had ever happened to him physically in his life. And he was ready. He was okay. As a doula, working with clients, if at all possible, you will remain present for their final breaths. Now, sometimes they don't want you there, and that is okay. That's okay. You can be present in whatever capacity you work out with that person. I have someone I'm working with currently who is incredible, and initially we were thinking probably not going to have me there, and now there's conversation about maybe changing mind, and we'll see. It's not up to me. It is up to them. It is their death. If I'm there, that's wonderful. If not, I will be there to support the family following. Because after death, the work doesn't stop immediately. In early grief and kind of reprocessing, the doula is there to support the loved ones, not as a grief counselor. I'm not a replacement for that. And I do have very good recommendations actually right down the street at the Monroe Center. But after death, I will meet with families to review and kind of process the feelings that came up during that vigil state, during the active dying process, and sometimes things that happened prior, just to kind of work out how were you feeling about that? Do you feel good that we honored their wishes? And that can be a really beautiful moment for the families to come together and have less arguing. Sometimes it gets a little spicy, but usually not. Just kind of come together and hear each other speak on how they felt as things were progressing. And that can happen in one long session or in short little sessions in the weeks following the death. But it can give the loved ones the chance to gain a different perspective on their experiences, as well as I can share some of the things that I observed, because often people are a lot more tender than what they realize in those final moments. And while with children especially, really, they can be so gentle and so sweet and so in tune with what is happening, and the adults often aren't paying all that much attention, not because they're not watching their children, but because they are so wrapped up in their own grief that they're worried about their loved one who is dying. The kids, we can order pizza and we can have them watch TV and it'll be fine. But there will be little moments where the kids know what's going on, and I might overhear them say something that's just very profound, and their trusted adult did not hear it, and it gives me the opportunity to share that. Okay. During the initial meeting there and the meetings that follow as we're leading up to death, there's no hard schedule that you have to follow. You can meet with folks as often or as little as what they want and what each respective schedule allows. But there are some questions that I like to ask people, just to get an idea of where they're at and encourage some of that reflection. Does anything worry you about the days ahead? Do you have any concerns about family issues? How can we improve your quality of life? Do you need to offer or receive forgiveness? That's a big one. Having regrets at the end of your life is common. It's common. No one wishes that they would have worked more. I will stand on that. No one wishes that they would have worked more. However, having someone as a third party that you can confide in, like imagine that you are the dying person. Do you want to tell your child or your spouse or your best friend all of these things that you've been keeping inside your whole life? Probably not. If you do, you are doing great. You are doing great. But having an outside party can be so helpful. And that is confidential. I am not sharing that with anyone outside of that room. Does anything frighten you about death? What kind of aftercare or what kind of after-death care do you want? What do you think happens when you die? And how may I best serve you? I try to stay away from the yes and no questions because there are ebbs and flows in the relationship between the dying person and the doula. Sometimes they are mad. They're mad that they're dying. They don't want to be dying, and they don't want me there because I am a reminder. That's okay. That's okay. I can sit in that silence. I can also take a hint, and if it's not a good day and I need to come back tomorrow, I understand. Overall, the journey is theirs. I'm just there to witness it and offer support and encourage exploration of what the end of their life looks like. Death cafes. We're gonna cheer up a little, and and move here. A death cafe is a group-directed discussion of death. There's no agenda. I'm not there to sell anything. I do not attend as anything more than the host. And when I attend one that I'm not hosting, I am just there as a stranger to talk about death, drink some coffee, and eat some cake. There's no agenda, there's no objective or theme. It is a discussion group rather than grief support or counseling session. It is kind of like this, just a group of strangers getting together to talk about how we are all going to die one day. Some of the funniest people I have ever met, I have met at death cafes, because that's how some people cope, and that's all right. That's okay. Is it a little uncomfy for some individuals? Absolutely. Not everyone uses humor to cope. That's okay. But I think the really cool thing about death cafes are just the stories that come out of it, and the would you rathers. I had someone attend one of my events, one of my first events actually. He was hilarious, and he unfortunately had lost some people in some horribly tragic, but kind of off the wall, almost silly ways. And I feel terrible saying that. They were just horrible accidents. But he was really breaking that down, and he's like, I think I would rather have that happen than this other scenario. And he was so lighthearted, and it was almost refreshing that yes, he has experienced so much trauma and just crazy losses happening in his life. And he's like, yeah, well, something has to take me, doesn't it? And that was his attitude, and that was great. I've also had people come who are living alone for the first time because they moved out of their house, had roommates, got married, and have now lost their spouse, and they've never experienced the quiet. And it's interesting. You don't have to share. You don't have to talk whenever you go. You can go and just say, hi, I'm Carly. I am here because I want to listen, and I don't really feel like sharing, and that's it. And you don't have to offer opinions. No one is there. No one is supposed to be giving advice. that is a limit there. But otherwise, just an open conversation. I did not coin Death Cafe. That is a trademarked brand there. I will have their website on my last slide here. It's just deathcafe.com, and you can read more about what brought them here. Let's see. We have things going on. So I'm here today, and I'm thrilled. I love it. I recently got set up with Green Top Grocery in their teaching kitchen, which is, if you walk in the door and go straight past the registers, they have this beautiful little space with a sliding barn door. They let you rent that, and I can move the tables, it's handicap accessible, I love it, and that is where I will be hosting some death cafes moving forward. So the fourth Sunday of every month at 2. It might get a little funny around the holidays, but I'll make that known, just because it's a lot in the winter. And while I do think that it's important to still have a meeting, I don't want to do it immediately after a holiday, and I just don't know what that month looks like yet. The healing library that's what I have started here, trying to collect books to lend to families that I'm working with, or just people in the community, to further explain to their children what death is, that it's not something bad that happens to us, that it's just the next part of life. It's just a consequence of living. I did bring a couple books here. Lifetimes, The Beautiful Way to Explain Death to Children. It's great. It's a quick, easy read. I think adults should read this too. It's very straightforward. Most of the time when people get sick, they get better. Sometimes they don't and they die, and that is their lifetime, and that is okay. That's kind of the ongoing theme in the book. This was my daughter's favorite, Duck, Death, and the Tulip. I also think adults should read this. I almost cried. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And this one's a little different. My daughter did say, this one's a little scary, Mom. But a lot of, at least with little people here, with the kids, their first experience with death might not be a human. It might be a raccoon or a possum on the side of the road. Fox gets into that, gets into how, although very sad, there are good things, there is new life that comes out of when an animal dies in the wilderness. So just good little reads to kind of introduce the idea so that it's less jarring when there is a loss of a loved one. And I do also have, I brought some things for recommendations for adults here. The grief deck is kind of like a game, not really. I like it because you can just pull a card. It's got a beautiful drawing, and on the back it will give sometimes a poem, sometimes an exercise for you to do to kind of work through your grief. I don't think you should reserve it only for immediate grief. I think it's great to do now when you don't believe that you are in any, you're not healing from a loss. Just kind of center yourself. There are tons of adult books out there. Echoes of Love is a good one. I do have a copy of that up front here, as well as one called, I won't say the word in front of my child, F Death. And that one is a little more straightforward. It is how to, it gives guidance on how to work through grief without all of the sympathy and all of the flowers showing up at your house and the I'm so sorries. It's very real. It's very raw. It's not something to leave out on the coffee table if you have budding readers in your household, but it's a good one. It's a good one. And for aspiring doulas, if you are thinking, hey, I want to get into this line of work, Briefly Perfectly Human is written by Alua Arthur. She is an incredible end-of-life doula. It is a wonderful read. Wonderful read. I cried during that one too. I'm a wimp. And there we go. I am happy to take questions if
Yes, any questions? And if you have a question, I'll come around with the microphone so our people listening in online can hear your questions as well. Yes.
Okay. I've experienced the fairly sudden death of my father. And in the week, basically, I was home the week before he died. He was clearly dying. He didn't get on, and it's fine, like, I'm not angry about it.
Right, yeah.
Right. And, like, my family handled it really well. But even in a family that handled it really well, my dad and my mom both had a hard time being like, he's dying. We need to take care of him because he's dying, right? So, and I'm sure you see that, but like how kind of, as an end-of-life doula, you have to name that somebody's dying, right? So like, what situations are you able to, how do you come into situations like that, or are you able to?
Yeah. So I have been hired both by the dying person themselves, who say, I want a very specific, very supported death for myself, and I know that this is coming. I've also been brought in by family. That is very common. People don't want to admit that their loved one is dying. I actually have been referred to folks before who are in just immense denial, and it's tricky. It really is. What I typically do is kind of assess the situation, would introduce myself as an end-of-life doula. That does not always go over the smoothest whenever someone believes that they are okay. And I can express that I don't have to come back and that's okay. My feelings are not hurt. However, you're very sick. You're very sick. I know you don't feel well. This has been explained to me by your family. How can I support you? And if you want to, if they want to go down kicking and fighting the whole time, I support that too. I do. If we have a terminal diagnosis and we want to try absolutely everything and just throw the book at it, that is how they want to go. Can it be harder for the family? Absolutely. I'm not dismissing that at all. It's when there is a spouse or children involved who some may realize and be very accepting of what is happening, and some may not. Really the best thing is just to ensure that the dying person, whether or not they agree that that is where they're headed, just ensure that they're supported. And we can have a lot of hypothetical conversations, a lot of, hey, I know we're not there yet. I know we're not there yet. And we're gonna keep trying this. We're gonna keep fighting. But if we do get there, if we do, what kind of things would bring you comfort? I don't believe that anyone goes into the home of their parent or their loved one who is sick and has malicious intent at all. I don't think that anyone says, I am going to disrespect their wishes because I can and because I want to. I don't believe that happens. I think everyone truly wants to do the best thing. But it can be hard. It can be hard. So when we've got folks who are actively dying, who are not quite on board with that, the best thing we can do is just show them support, keep them comfortable, try to make the last few weeks or days or months fun and comfy, and respect their wishes. And as things slow down, because they will, explain to the family what is happening, that they are experiencing these symptoms because their disease is progressing. Hi.
So, I feel like a lot of people think that when somebody's dying, they just die fast. You know, I feel like that is one of the best ways. But like, for example, our mom has been dying for probably the past 10 years. And as we near what seems to be more towards an end, it just seems it's very hard the day to day because you're in the limbo area. So how do you handle that? Because it's there's not enough of a reason to not be going to work, not continuing your life, but you still feel in the back of your head, it's oh man, but it could be today.
It's hard. It's hard. So that anticipatory grief is a real thing. It is. And knowing that your loved one, your mom, is sick and has been for a long time, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That is, you both look very young, and I hope that's not offensive when I say that, but I'm you look super young, and that's hard. Whenever you need a day, take it. Whenever you are feeling that you need to go and spend a day with her, do it if you can. That being said, do not beat yourself up over it. Don't, because it's not your fault. It's not. And there are grief counselors who you can see now while you're not mourning the loss of your mom, but are mourning the change in the relationship, I'm sure. And that can be helpful, and I know it sounds really hokey saying like you have to take care of yourself, but you do. And I know that what if something happens and I'm not there, that fear is valid. It is. But you do still have to live, still have to be able to pay bills. And I hate saying that. I hate it because there should be more support, but I won't get on that soapbox today. When you need a day, take it. And if you're not there and there is a change in symptoms, that is not your fault. That's not your fault.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you, Carley, so much for sharing this wonderful information with us. I do want to thank our sponsors, MCK, CPAs, and advisors for sponsoring our Lunch and Learn, and also WGLT for sponsoring the live stream. As I mentioned, Morning in McLean officially opens Monday, but if you stay, you can get a sneak peek right now. I invite everyone to visit our website, makehistory.org, to see all of the upcoming program series we have related to these displays. And I hope that you will join us next month on Thursday, October 9th, to learn more about the history of Country Financial during their centennial year. Thank you all again for joining us, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.